West here, reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
This mission is to particularly try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
Hey, good morning, friends and neighbors. What do you say? Wednesday, May 7. Good to see you today, and welcome to the Bill Press Show. Here we are. in our studio in Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., booming out to you all across this great land of ours on Free Speech TV, DirecTV and the Dish Network, and on, of course, our video stream worldwide, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TAWKR TV, and lots to talk about today. President Obama heads off down to Arkansas late this morning. He will be visiting the victims of the tornadoes in recent weeks, tornadoes and flooding down there. And then he will go off to the West Coast to be there for a couple of days in Los Angeles, in San Diego, in San Jose, doing fundraisers for the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee and for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Events that I certainly would be attending if I were still Democratic State Chair of California, but that was a long time ago. Meanwhile, here in Washington, D.C., the White House yesterday released its third annual climate change report, and it is devastating. It says that climate change is already here. It is impacting every single area of the United States. Nobody escapes. It is already impacting the air, the water, the sea level, our crops, our forests, across the board, our food supply, our weather, of course. And it said things are only going to get worse and worse and worse unless we take action now. The Tea Party candidate in North Carolina lost big time. Rand Paul suffering a big loss in North Carolina. And the United States announced it is sending a team to Nigeria to help locate those almost 300 girls who were abducted and could be sold as sex slaves. Lots to cover here. Lots you're going to want to call about. Give us a call at 866-55-PRESS, The Bill Press Show, Wednesday morning.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university. And,
yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
This is the Monica Lewinsky free edition of The Bill Press Show. Hey, good morning, everybody. What do you say? Wednesday, May 7. It's the Bill Press Show, coming to you live, as always, from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, last time I looked. And bringing you the news of the day here from Washington, D.C., from around the country, from around the globe, wherever it's happening. We are there with you, to take a look at the big stories of the day and to talk about what it all means, what we think about it, what we want to do about it. Thanks so much for joining us on your local progressive talk radio station. Thanks so much for joining us on Free Speech TV and wherever you are on the planet. Thanks for joining us on our video stream, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TAWKRTV. Well, it's early in the morning. Just getting everything going this morning. And Peter Ogburn, he's got one more day off, then we'll drag him in here, or he'll drag himself in here again tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, it's still Elisa Murphy at the controls. Elisa, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Alicia Cruz there. The rest of the team ready to take your calls. Don't forget, how to do it. 866-55-PRESS is our toll-free number. And we welcome your comments also on, if the phone's too complicated or takes too much time, welcome your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. As we mentioned, not only your morning radio show, progressive radio show on your local progressive radio station, but also simulcast on Free Speech TV and on our video stream, and the guy responsible for that, Cyprian Bolding, our videographer. Good morning, Cyprian. I mentioned we're going to be Monica free. I don't care what Monica thinks and what she says in her Vanity Fair article. Come on.
Breaking news, Bill. Breaking news.
As when I was co-host of Crossfire, I spent much too much time talking about Monica Lewinsky. That is so yesterday. All we will do is make fun of it with the help of Jimmy Fallon last night. My sentiments, exactly.
And this is pretty big. For the first time in 10 years, Monica Lewinsky is breaking her silence about her affair with Bill Clinton for a new essay in Vanity Fair. In the essay, she actually says it's time to burn the beret, bury the blue dress, and move on. And Americans said, yeah, we did 15 years ago. I mean, where have you been? Where have you been? We're over it.
We are so over it.
So
indeed.
True.
Yeah. So James Clyburn, a former whip of the House of Representatives, is from South Carolina, part of the Democratic leadership. Number 3 in the Democratic leadership is going to be here in studio with us this morning. Very excited about that. We will kick off with David Jackson, covers the White House for USA Today. He'll be joining us a little bit later in this hour. And then Chris Moody will be here today from Yahoo News as a friend of Bill. He just spent his spring break sampling whiskey down in Kentucky, and he will tell us all about it. The big news of the day is the White House climate change report. We'll get right to that. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Well, have you seen those bike sharing programs around?
They're everywhere.
We've got a great one here in Washington, D.C. In fact, there's one right across the street from us at the Metro stop, Eastern Market Metro stop.
Very convenient.
There's another one a block and a half this way, the other way, from our studio, right at Eastern Market. There's another one at Lincoln Park, which is maybe 6 blocks away. I mean, we're surrounded by them here, downtown, they're everywhere. Washington, D.C. has a huge program. Washington Post reporting on which cities have the biggest programs, by the way. And the very first one, I think, in the world, the first one certainly that I saw, was in Paris. They call it Vélo Libre. It is still the number one.
Oh, wow.
There are more stops in Paris. This system is just incredible. I don't know whether you've ever used it, but you can get a membership, or you can just walk up and rent a bike, and you take it from one place and leave it at another. I know a lot of people who use them either to go to work or to go shopping, or you can just take it for a joyride too. But the real purpose is to use it instead of a car or instead of even the bus for commuting.
Yeah, it's a great way to explore a city too if you are visiting.
It's a great way to explore a city. But the neat thing about it is, you don't have to get it back where you picked it up. And it's not that expensive either. I think
it's not at all. I've done it in Arlington.
Yeah, I think I've done it here. I think you leave a $5 deposit, and maybe, I don't know, it's $10 for. It depends on how many hours you keep it out, obviously. But then you see around Washington, you see these trucks that pick up the bikes from one place and get them back to the other because they have to keep enough bikes at each location. At any rate, interesting. Here are the cities in order that have the most traffic and are the most successful bike sharing program. They're not bike sharing programs, whether they call them that or not. But yeah, bike sharing systems. Paris is number 1. London, number 2. Zhongshan in China, number 3. Montreal, number 4. Barcelona, 5. Jiangsu in China, 6. Lyon, 7. Brussels, 8. New York, where it just started already, number 9, in terms of stations, number of stations, and number of people using it. And Washington, D.C., right up there as number 10.
Oh, we made it into the top 10.
Yeah, so Washington's program's been, it is, you can see it, very, very successful. These red bikes, you see them everywhere. Great thing to do if you got one in your city, or if you're visiting a city that's got one, you ought to try it out, check it out. Okay. And now, yes, this climate change report came out yesterday. It is the 3rd annual. A couple of weeks ago, the United Nations came out with its report looking at climate change and the impacts on the global level, right? This is the 3rd annual White House report looking at the impact of climate change here in the United States. And the findings are devastating. Devastating indeed. Let me just read a couple of it's top story in the New York Times this morning. Headline: U.S. climate has already changed, study finds, citing heat and floods. And in the Washington Post, headline: study, climate risks growing. First of all, I just think this is great. Let me just say, this is great. The idea that global warming, climate change, is the number 1 story on the network news last night, the number 1 story on the front page of the major papers this morning, the number 1 story and the number 1 question at the briefing yesterday at the White House. The very first question was about climate change. This is great. That's the attention we need to give it. And by the way, the best news is, at the briefing yesterday, if you follow my tweets from the briefing, and if you don't, shame on you. Remember, at BillPress.com, just sign up. At any rate, at the briefing yesterday, an entire briefing, 1 hour and 10 minutes long, not one question on Benghazi.
Wow.
Lots of questions on climate change. Again, back to it. Let me just read first paragraph from the New York Times. Sums it up. The effects of human-induced climate change. Very significant. Human-induced climate. Nobody denies anymore. We're the one, except James Inhofe and the Koch brothers, but everybody else. The effects of human-induced climate change are being felt in every corner of the United States, scientists reported Tuesday, with water growing scarcer in dry regions, torrential rains increasing in wet regions, heat waves becoming more common and more severe, wildfires growing worse, look at Oklahoma right today, and forests dying under assault from heat-loving insects. Wow. Okay, that's the New York Times. How about the Washington Post? Here's how they start. The government's newest national assessment of climate change declares that increased global warming is affecting every part of the United States. The report, released Tuesday, cites wide and severe impacts, more sea level rise, flooding, storm surges, precipitation, and heat waves in the Northeast, frequent water shortages and hurricanes in the Southeast and the Caribbean, and more drought and wildfires in the Southwest. Every single region of the country impacted. The Washington Post on the front page points out, here are some of the impacts we see. Temperatures at sea, on land, and on ice, all warming. Average global temperature has risen more than 1.5 degrees. For 2 decades, sea level has been rising about 3 millimeters a year. Record high sea levels in 2012. Arctic sea ice. The minimum extent of sea ice during the Arctic summer has declined 40%. And then it also talks about the glaciers around. So it is there. It is, and that's the other thing the report says. This is not something that's going to happen if we don't act. This is something that is already, climate change is already here. Disastrous impacts already in every part of the county and of the country, rather. And CBS News last night, they had their reporter in Miami. Miami, one of the first cities to go. Miami, it was Miami, New Orleans, Virginia Beach. It identified the cities that are the most vulnerable to sea level rise. And Miami is already panicking. They're already talking about spending billions and billions and billions of dollars in some way to try to save downtown Miami. So it is here. President Obama talked about it yesterday. He had a whole group of meteorologists in the White House. He talked about it yesterday, and he said, this is real, folks. This is not, Alice in Wonderland.
This is not just some pie-in-the-sky distant issue. This is something that already is affecting people who are getting hit by floods, increased wildfires, droughts.
But the president did say the good news is, if there is any, there's a slim glimmer of hope here, is it's not too late to turn this around.
We also have a chance to turn back these rising temperatures if we take some bold actions now. And that's going to require a combination of government action, business action, and individual action. But of course, there were the critics. The critics, as can be expected. The Cato Institute, a research organization here a think tank here in Washington, D.C., funded by who else? The Koch brothers. The Koch brothers are totally anti-climate change, right? Because they're the big oil guys, the big gas guys, the big Keystone Pipeline guys. Koch brothers fund the Cato Institute. The Cato Institute immediately came out and accused the president of using scare tactics, trying to scare the hell out of the American people. Well, you know what? I think those findings in this report should scare the hell out of the American people. Damn right they should. And then other people, like James Inhofe, of course, Republican senator from Oklahoma, whose state is on fire right now. He denies there is any such thing as climate change, just denies it even exists, calls it a great hoax. And Mitch McConnell, who's,
He and Inhofe are certainly the two dimmest light bulbs in the whole United States Senate. Mitch McConnell just accuses the president of playing politics. This is only a political issue, he says, that President Obama is trying to use to get liberals to come out and vote in 2014. How pathetic.
I'm sure he'll get loud cheers from liberal elites, from the kind of people who leave a giant carbon footprint and then lecture everybody else about low-flow toilets.
Yeah, I'd like to flush him down a low-flow toilet. Jay Carney was asked yesterday if he had any response to Mitch McConnell's comment that I just played, and Jay Carney just said, no. Right answer. Don't even go there. Such an idiot. I mean, look. But the idea that, why should this be political? Come on. We are destroying the planet. We are destroying the planet. We are, kind of condemning ourselves, but maybe not ourselves, but our kids and our kids' kids, to losing this, a lot of what we enjoy today in terms of clean air, clean water, a livable environment. We are doing it to ourselves, and Republicans just want to make this a political football. No, this is something we all ought to be in together. And that's what scares me, and that's what I like your comment on. Because then in the New York Times also, they report a Pew Research study just took a look at what people think about climate change and whether they're worried about it. In the United States, 40% of Americans think it's a serious issue. 40%, only 40% of Americans. In France, in Germany, in Canada, 50% think it's a serious issue. In Italy, in Spain, 60% think it's a serious issue. In Japan, 70% say, this is really scary, we better do something about it. And in the United States, only 40%. What is it going to take to wake people up? Will this report wake people up and demand that Congress do something about climate change? If not, man, we're all going to be underwater. 866-55-PRESS is the toll-free number. Let's talk about it. Climate change. It is here. It is impacting every single corner of the United States.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You make it sound very easy to take these 90-degree turns in your career. You went from engineering to law. But there's an awful lot of people at that age who feel they're on a track, they've invested time in learning a career, and they need to see it through to the end, or maybe their parents are pushing them to stay in one route. What is your advice for a young person?
Stay away from your parents.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
My mom is a pretty spectacular human being. We essentially came to the United States as refugees. And that is when I really got to understand who my mom was as a person. Being a refugee in a foreign country, you would think that it would affect you so much. It was like my mom, nothing changed for my mom. What was really at her core and her center was always being with her kids and getting to spend time with them and making sure that they were okay and making sure that they could still go out and play soccer. I knew that if my goal was to go to Liberia and to work on economic justice so that, kids could go to school and have access to a doctor if they have malaria, that if I bet on their moms, we win.
I think I just come from a lineage of kick-ass women is all I can say. My grandmother came to this country from Mexico as a single mom with 5 children. And I, have an amazing mother who had 3 children, was going to school, working full-time. Almost my story. But she did that and got her bachelor's degree at 40. And so I had a great role model. When I came home and told my mom I was pregnant, her response to me wasn't, your life is over. Her response to me is, well, I want a plan. You need to, let me know what you're going to do about this because you're now responsible for somebody else.
I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents were very proud of it. They both had to work. My mom in a factory and my dad in the supermarket, and I was their success story. However, on graduation day, they said, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be a businessman? What are you going to, lawyer? I said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And they said, what? My parents were very much opposed to this, and it was very difficult.
How much pressure did they put on you?
Tremendous pressure. Up until we were leaving from O'Hare Airport for me to go to Peru, my mother questioning me, like, where is Peru? You've never been out of the country. What do you know? Do they have doctors? Do they speak English there? What are you going to eat? You know you like my cooking? I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pioneer. Why do you always have to be the pioneer? Let them do it. Let them come back, and then you go. I said, no, I want to be the first to go.
I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, so there was a lot of gang activity, and one of my friends actually was murdered on a basketball court when a 15-year-old child shot him in the back of the head. And I was just hopeless. And my mom actually, she brought me to a place of empathy for the kids who were involved in actually murdering him, because my mom sort of said, look, where do you think those kids are coming from? And then she said, so if you're angry about it, do something. Actually change the way this world works.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Talking about the White House climate change report that came out yesterday, the great organization 350.org has a comment on the front page of Huffington Post this morning, which I think sums it up. Jamie Henn from 350.org says, in order for us to see real progress on climate change, politicians need to be just as embarrassed to stand next to the head of ExxonMobil as they would be to stand next to the head of Philip Morris, which nobody would do today. What does it all mean to you? Michael out in Imperial Beach, California, early in the morning on the West Coast. Good morning, Michael.
How you doing, Mr. President?
All right, Bill, thank you. Yes.
Back to climate change. I mean, I truly believe that the rich people, the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, blah, 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 you know, these people have so much money that they're preparing for climate change differently than me and you are, because they're building fortresses and sanctuaries, and there's a seed bank being built in Norway, and they're not going to survive this game the same way that me and you are going to survive. So what do you think?
No, I think you've got an excellent point. You are absolutely right. Their homes are not going to be underwater, right?
Correct.
They will always have a safe harbor, these guys. But, you know, it's all the people who can't afford their third or fourth or fifth home uphill that are going to be the ones that suffer. That's another aspect of this. That's, again, why the Koch brothers are funding the opposition to doing anything about climate change.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I talk to undergraduates and graduate students who are desperate to go out and start something and build something and be the one to come up with that silver bullet solution. And I just want to say, slow down.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis. Most of the people you're talking to who want to come into the social change space, are they prepared?
If you're early in your career, there's a couple of really important things to do. The first one is just to shut the hell up and don't talk for about 5 years and work really, really hard. The only way you're going to be given more difficult things to do is by solving the ones you're already given. And if you're somebody who's always complaining or wants to be promoted above where they really are, you can't learn enough to start to take on a greater pool of responsibilities.
Advice you would give a person coming out of college is go work for other people, make your mistakes on their dime.
That sounds like me, absolutely.
It does sound like you.
And you know who that came from is one of my board members, Eric Buttline. Eric had seen me start a few companies as a young kid. I mean, I started my first real company when I was 16. And Eric said, "Chid, do me a favor. I know you have this thing in your head that you think you're this great entrepreneur, but like go work for somebody for a little while and just learn how things are supposed to be done. And when you're done with that, let's have another conversation about, you know, your next venture."
And I think another thing to remember, and this is something that I've really only learned in the past couple of years, is that although the problems are urgent and so important for us to address, I need to have more patience. I'm not going to solve those problems on my own. You're not going to solve those problems on your own. I'm an apprentice in all of this. You know, I'm an apprentice in life. I'm an apprentice in problem solving. I'm not going to change the world until I'm at least 65. That's my goal at this point.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org. to let us know your thoughts.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I don't know how many times we can hear it before people realize these are the facts, this is the situation, and we've got to respond. Talking, of course, about climate change, global warming. We had the report from the United Nations, hundreds of scientists from all around the world getting together and saying climate change is real, it's here, it's affecting every part of the globe. Yesterday, the third annual, by the way, I keep mentioning that because the idea that the White House just cooked this up as some 2014 political scheme is just absurd. This is the third year in a row that they've come out with a climate change report, which, by the way, is certainly something the White House ought to be doing. This is a very serious problem impacting this country, and the report shows that every corner of the country today, not 10 years from now, today, is already feeling the effects of climate change in terms of higher temps, or in some cases colder temps, extreme weather situations, because the weather works both ways, the impact of climate change toward hotter temperatures and colder temperatures as well, and more precipitation, more severe storms. We've seen that in this explosion of tornadoes that we've seen recently, and wildfires. In the hotter areas of the country, they're experiencing hotter temperatures. In the wetter areas of the country, they're experiencing more precipitation. Insects, our forests are being impacted, our crops, sea level rising, where certain major cities of the United States already threatened every area of the country. And the White House just lays out the facts, just lays it out there. And now the question is, do we give a damn? Do American people give a damn? I'm really bothered by that survey that shows that only 40% of Americans think this is a major problem. I guess we have to lose Miami, right? You would think Hurricane Sandy would be enough to say, whoa, maybe we better do something, right? And look at those areas that were impacted, lower Manhattan and the Jersey coast by Hurricane Sandy. They're also going to be vulnerable. They are vulnerable to the rise in sea levels. Maybe it's going to take that, lose Staten Island or lose Miami before people really get serious. What's it going to take? Do you think this report will do it? 866-55-PRESS is our toll-free number. Rose is out in Ligonier, Indiana. Hello, Rose.
Hi. Morning, Bill.
Hi.
A simple way to put this into context is when we want to throw trash all through our homes and just leave anything, garbage, and neglect everything, because the earth is our home. We have been seeing these things since the 70s. Love Canal. We just heard on the news the other day that it is called a zombie fly that used to just go around and attack hornets and wasps. Now it is after the honeybee. The honeybee is a significant portion of our food production.
Mm-hmm.
Start taking care of what the Indians termed Mother Earth. This is all our home.
It's all we've got. It's all we've got, Rose. No, you're absolutely right. And I don't know what it's going to take before people wake up and say, this should not be a political issue. This is something that everybody on the planet ought to be concerned about. I mean, didn't Aesop write a couple of fables about that maybe we might learn from? I mean, a lesson we could have learned like a long time ago. Out in Minneapolis. Hello, Diane. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm concerned, Bill, that we're letting two very aged men, such as Adelson and Charles Koch is 78. Let's see, Adelson is 80. David Koch.
David Koch, you can add him to it, right, as well.
He has
right.
cancer, and there seems to be a pattern. It's like, do they want to take us with them, or?
I hadn't thought of it that way. But they are pouring their money. If you look at, there's a university, George Mason University, right outside of town here, where the Koch brothers have a big think tank, right? The Cato Institute, this big thing, one of the biggest think tanks here in Washington, D.C. They have put research institutes on many college campuses. The Koch brothers have with their money. And what is their agenda for all of them? Anti-EPA, right? Anti-environmental regulation, anti-any climate change legislation, anti-any carbon tax, anything, right? They have fought it. And I think that's, Diane, I think they're partly the reason why the percentage of Americans that believe this is a serious problem is so low, because of all the propaganda they put out there.
Me too.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Diane. Good to hear from you. There is no more, in my judgment, there is no more important issue. And I think the White House did a good job yesterday by putting this report out there. And again, President Obama, I thought, did a good job by getting the meteorologist from, interesting, he didn't go to the news reporters who might have to say, oh, on the one hand, the White House says this, but on the other hand, Jim Inhofe says this, or, right, yeah, the White House report shows this, but boy, the Cato Institute says that can't be true, boom, boom, boom. No, they got the meteorologists, the weather people from stations all around the country together. They're the ones that interviewed the president yesterday. For the most part, they're meteorologists, they're scientists. They just report the facts, and they know what's going on. They know it because it's their life, it's their business, and they see it. So I thought that, again, the White House did a very good job yesterday of informing. All they did was inform the American people. Notice they didn't put it out as a political document. They didn't say, this is terrible. This happened because Republicans didn't do blah, 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 blah. No, they just said, hey, folks, you ought to know what's going on in this country. And here's what's going on. And they put it out there. John Holdren, they put it out there to inform the American people. And again, once informed, I just hope. What the guy from 350.org said about when it becomes embarrassing for any politician to be seen in public with the head of an oil company or with Charles and David Koch, then we've made progress on climate change. When the American people get so concerned that they would automatically vote against anybody, Republican or Democrat, vote against any politician who would oppose climate change legislation, then we're on the right track. Then that the American people are finally starting to get concerned about it. Finally, let's, before we move on, talk to David Jackson from USA Today. Kathleen is calling from Weed, California. Hello, Kathleen.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
On the Earth extinction, with all the fracking and stuff, I think it's going to cause a huge earthquakes. And then not only that, but the gases that are coming up from the bottom of the ocean, I think there's a possibility that we will go into a big extinction. We won't anymore.
Well, it's happened before, Kathleen, as we know, right?
Right.
But that was from asteroids, I think, hitting the Earth. I hadn't heard about that that other danger that you mentioned. But by the way, yesterday, 2 days ago at the White House, the question did come up about fracking, which is part of the president's energy policy. And they kind of, John Podesta, he sort of took a pass on that. He said basically it's up to the states to decide whether or not they allow fracking. I think the White House ought to step up on fracking and say, that pouring these poisons down into the earth, poisonous chemicals down into the earth in order to extract the natural gas, it's doing more harm than good. By the way, this also raised a question about where does Keystone Pipeline fit into this? I don't think he can possibly approve the Keystone Pipeline and be consistent with this climate change report. President Obama on the road today. What's up? Where is it going? What's it all about? David Jackson joins us from the White House for USA Today.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Bauhaus was one of the most definitive design movements of the modern age, reaching its peak between the two world wars. The word Bauhaus, loosely translated from German, means house of construction or school of building. Bauhaus was a new type of art school. Historically, European art academies taught each design subject separately. The Bauhaus offered foundation training in many art and design disciplines. They believed in variety. Understanding mass production was part of the curriculum, and the school sought to develop students who could unify art with craft while embracing new technology. It was also the beginning of the art school as an alternative way of life. Germany at that time was a pretty conservative place. And before the Nazis said "Nein" to the Bauhaus, it was arguably the most celebrated art school in the world. Bauhaus thinkers believed the world needed to be fundamentally rethought. Unnecessary ornamentation was out. Minimalism was in. Good design required simplicity and geometric purity. One of the best known icons of Bauhaus design is the cantilevered chair. Designed by someone named Breuer, it was inspired by the steel tubes of his bicycle, and ultimately led to the first lightweight, mass-produced metal chair. Despite his success, Breuer concluded that eventually chairs would become obsolete, and everyone would soon be sitting on supportive columns of air. Bauhaus was all about innovation and inspiration. Nowadays, Bauhaus influences can be seen everywhere, from road signs and graphic design to big windows and even bigger buildings. In architecture, the international style, as it became known, influenced skylines the world over. Bauhaus was about ideas, reform, exploration and vitality, about making more tidy sense of the rapidly evolving world around us, and giving us more cool stuff for our apartments.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
13 minutes before the top of the hour, Wednesday morning, May 7. President Obama conducting a very unusual set of interviews at the White House yesterday. Wanted to talk to the White House, to the president yesterday. You had to be a weatherman or weather lady at any rate. David Jackson is neither.
No, not even close.
But he covers the White House for USA Today. Our good friend. Hey, David, how you doing?
Fine, Bill. How are you?
It was interesting yesterday, right? A way of getting the message out.
It was very interesting. It
creative,
was
I guess.
A couple days ago, I realized, I knew the climate assessment was coming out, yet President Obama wasn't scheduled to make any kind of remarks, which I thought was unusual. And then I guess it was late Monday I found out we got a bunch of meteorologists coming in, and he was going to give shotgun interviews to those guys and talk about climate change in terms of the weather. And this is all part of it's a long-standing effort from the White House and also its predecessor in the Bush administration to try to reach people where they live and talk to specific types of reporters, in this case weather reporters, to talk about climate change. And it's to try to break through the fragmented media.
Well, yeah, and I think, clearly they figured that the meteorologists would take the climate change study seriously, right? And if he talked to political reporters, they'd all be asking questions about, what does Jim Inhofe say about this?
Exactly.
Right?
We'd be looking at the political aspects of it. They're looking at the environmental aspects of it.
Yeah. Here's what gets me. So the president's going on the road today, right?
Right.
To, what's the purpose?
Central Arkansas. Well, first of all, he's beginning his 3-day trip to California, which is mostly a fundraising gig.
Yeah,
but
right.
En route to California, he's going to stop in Arkansas and look at the devastation wrought by those tornadoes, which were a week ago Sunday. So it's kind of a late trip to do this kind of thing, but it tied in better to their schedule. And he's going to, talk to local officials, talk to residents, but I suspect he's also going to make remarks and touch again on the climate change report, because one of the claims is that extreme weather is a result of climate change.
Right. That's what I was wondering, whether it's going to tie this climate change message
I suspect he will. I don't know how subtle he's going to be about it, because you don't want to go down there and talk what some people say is a political issue in the middle of all that devastation, but I'm sure he'll touch on it.
Right. Interesting, at the briefing yesterday, David, there was not one question on Benghazi. I don't remember one at any rate. But
I thought there might have been one, or at least a reference to one, but I could be. You're right, I may be wrong. No, it's here today, gone tomorrow. I was a little surprised at that too, because we're not sure the White House is going to cooperate with this investigation. So it'll set up this whole once this conference. There's the potential for more confrontation between the House and the White House over document production.
It was particularly I thought striking, because the three briefings before that were totally consumed by Benghazi, and it was as if it had fallen off the face of the earth. Julie Pace, the VP, of course, set the tone. Her first question, climate change.
Right, exactly. Of course, that was the theme of the day. Well,
right.
We can only pay attention to one thing at a time. A couple of days ago was Benghazi, and yesterday it was the climate change. I'm sure Benghazi is going to come back around, because I'm like First of all, another reason it wasn't a big deal at the White House yesterday is because Congress the Democrats in the House have to figure out whether they want to even participate in this thing. I think that's the next real big step.
Right, it's not even clear. Right,
they may boycott the
special committee. Right,
but if one way or another, it's going to come back, because not only is the House committee going to, I'm sure, try to subpoena more documents, they'll probably try to subpoena actual witnesses. So I see a lot of legislative, executive confrontation over this coming down the pike.
On the political side yesterday, the interesting showdown in the Republican primary in North Carolina, right, pitting Rand Paul and his Tea Party candidate against Mitt Romney and Mitch McConnell and the establishment candidate. And the establishment won.
Yep, I think that's going to be a theme in the coming weeks, the revenge of the establishment. I was in South Carolina last week.
Yeah.
Lindsey Graham's in a very good position. He's a very good bet for renomination, but he may do it without a runoff, and that's interesting given the fact he's got 6 Tea Party-type opponents running against him, yet he's still likely to get over 50% when the primary takes place on June the 10th. In North Carolina, the threshold's 40%, and Tom Tillis, the establishment candidate, got well over that and beat back Tea Party challengers, including one that was backed by Rand Paul, as you pointed out. So the establishment's starting to feel pretty good about itself, although some people will point out that the establishment now is much more conservative than it was before the Tea Party existed.
True, right. And it also probably bodes well for Mitch McConnell in Kentucky in the primary there as well.
I think McConnell's pretty much got the primary lock, at least that's what I'm hearing from people in Kentucky, because now there's much more emphasis on the general election against Allison Grimes.
All right. Now, finally, what happened with this little motorcade incident yesterday afternoon? I'm glad I was not around the White House.
It forced me to follow my weather story quite early, because it was... one of the interesting things about having all these weather people at the White House yesterday, they were getting ready to do their live shots from the White House lawn, and all of a sudden they got kicked off the White House lawn because they went into what we call lockdown. That's when there's a security concern. They lock down the White House. It happens about every 1 or 2 months. Usually it's a backpack that's left on the street.
I know. I've been there when that happens, and it's a pain in the ass because you can't get in, you can't get out.
For hours, or even hours. I've been stuck in there for over 3 hours sometimes.
Whoa.
This case was unusual because apparently there was a motorcade coming back, getting ready to enter the White House compound, and some car just looped in behind the motorcade and entered Pennsylvania Avenue, which is unauthorized territory for a standard
on Pennsylvania,
for a non-government car.
Oh, really?
So he was actually on Pennsylvania Avenue within 50 yards of the White House lawn.
Oh, wow.
And they stopped it and stopped the car. I understand weapons may have been drawn. They got the driver out. They arrested him. Turns out he's an employee with the Treasury Department. As best we can determine, he seemed to think because he worked at the Treasury Department, he could get on this motorcade, which is quite unusual. So
maybe he was just going to work.
It was really very odd because one of the odd things about it on top of that was that they entered the checkpoint at 17th Street, which is on the Treasury Department's on the other side of the White House from that.
Right.
So he wasn't really near his office when he did this. So obviously there was a lot of initial concern about what may have been happening. Very concerned about a potential security breach, but apparently it's just some weird driver who, for some strange reason, decided to join the motorcade going into the White House complex.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea for us, David, that when we're going to work at the White House, that we don't try to drive into Pennsylvania Avenue, right?
Well, I've been in motorcades on the real street, and when cars tried to join it, they're flashed out, and people start doing their horns, and officers will start yelling at the drivers to get out. So I can't imagine what they might have done to this guy. I mean, he may actually be lucky because it's a very dangerous thing to do.
Absolutely. You're not going on the trip today?
Alas, no, I'm staying back. We've got a couple situations we've got to deal with here around the house. And it's, like I say, it's mostly a fundraising trip.
Yeah.
President Obama will give an energy speech on Friday in San Jose before he comes back to Washington. But most of the rest of the trip's devoted to raising campaign money.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll enjoy a couple of days without a briefing, and I'll catch up with you later. Thanks,
Great.
David
Thank you,
Jackson.
Bill.
All right,
Bye.
David Jackson, USA Today at the White House.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Who's a bit paranoid about.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
It's Clyburn at the top of the next hour of the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When danger is imminent, will you be...
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Hey, good morning, friends and neighbors. What do you say? Wednesday, May 7. Good to see you today, and welcome to the Bill Press Show. Here we are in our studio on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., booming out to you all across this great land of ours on Free Speech TV, DirecTV, and the Dish Network, and on, of course, our video stream worldwide, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TawkrTV, and lots to talk about today. President Obama heads off down to Arkansas late this morning. He will be visiting the victims of the tornadoes in recent weeks, tornadoes and flooding down there. And then he will go off to the West Coast to be there for a couple of days in Los Angeles, in San Diego, in San Jose, doing fundraisers for the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee and for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, events that I certainly would be attending if I were still Democratic State Chair of California, but that was a long time ago. Meanwhile, here in Washington, D.C., the White House yesterday released its third annual climate change report, and it is devastating. It says that climate change is already here. It is impacting every single area of the United States. Nobody escapes. It is already impacting the air, the water, the sea level, our crops, our forests, across the board, our food supply, our weather, of course. And it said things are only going to get worse and worse and worse unless we take action now. The Tea Party candidate in North Carolina lost big time. Rand Paul suffering a big loss in North Carolina. And the United States announced it is sending a team to Nigeria to help locate those almost 300 girls who were abducted and could be sold as sex slaves. Lots to cover here. Lots you're going to want to call about. Give us a call at 866-55-PRESS, The Bill Press Show, Wednesday morning.
This is The Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I probably would make a time machine. I would make medicine for the sick. I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总冠军戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live.
You said 5, right?
5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much.
I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter. I think I'd go looking for aliens. If I could live an extra 5 years.
I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime. I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you
that lets you learn at light speed. If I had 5 more extra years to live, I would be the boss of all the chipmunks. Eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas. I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
The only morning show that will be totally Monica Lewinsky free. I don't care what she told Vanity Fair. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you on this Wednesday morning, May 7. It is The Bill Press Show. We are here in our nation's capital, and we are there with you everywhere in this great land of ours. On your local progressive talk radio station, wherever you happen to be. Simulcast on Free Speech TV nationwide. You got a satellite dish, you've got us on DirecTV. And worldwide on our video stream. How about that? At youtube.com/TawkrTV, TAWKRTV. Coming to you again live from our nation's capital in our studio right here on Capitol Hill. We like to be right on Capitol Hill because that way our good friends who serve in the House or in the Senate can just stop by on their way to work. And no better friend than the Honorable James Clyburn from South Carolina. The Whip, we call him.
Well,
Hi, Congressman.
Thank you very much for remembering.
Great. Wasn't that long ago.
No.
And it'll be again soon. We hope. Assistant Democratic leader as well as representing South Carolina's 6th Congressional District. Congressman, always good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, and we want to talk to you about what's going on the Hill and also about your new book, Blessed Experiences, Genuinely Southern, Proudly Black. So, sums that up, doesn't it?
Yes, we tried to do that. We started out writing this book several years ago, and I had selected a different working title for the book, and I got bogged down and just couldn't get it done. So I sat down one day and started reflecting on my father, the way he prepared for his sermons on Sundays. He would always take his last meal of the week around 6 o'clock on Friday and would not eat a full meal again.
Really?
Yes, until after church on Sundays. And he spent all day Saturday reading, writing, and he would always be hymning his favorite tune. It was Blessed Assurance. So I picked a hymnal up to try to find out what my dad got out of that hymn.
Yeah.
And it was all there, and I could understand it. So I decided to change my working title to Blessed Experiences, and it began to flow.
No kidding.
And
wow,
so,
that's a great story.
I got it done.
Yeah.
So much so until when I submitted the book, the University of South Carolina Press came back to me and said, we do not usually publish books of this type beyond 150,000 words. And I had submitted 186,000 words.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So they asked me to go back and rework it, and I took 36,000 words out.
Oh, my God.
That took almost 2 years.
Oh, man. Well, I'm impressed because the books that I've done are all about 85,000 words. So,
well, my next one will be somewhere around
You did 2 in 1.
Yeah.
So welcome.
A good start on the second one. Will be the third one in this instance.
Welcome to the studio here. Lots
Thank
to talk about. I want to say hello to our team here. Peter Ogburn from South Carolina. He's on vacation. He'll be back tomorrow. But Elisa Murphy and Alicia Cruz.
Good morning.
Cyprian Bolding, our entire here. We welcome you. Just a quick little segue. Now, you mentioned your father and his favorite hymn, Blessed Assurance. There's a video sensation and out there now, Congressman, from Italy, happens to be a nun. She is 25 years old. Her name is Sister Cristina Suscia, and she went on. They have a show there here called The Voice. This is the Italian equivalent of The Voice, and knocked them dead.
Oh yeah,
here she is. Whew. I'll tell you, that's unlike any nun I had in school.
That's great.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
I grew up right across the street from St. Jude Catholic school, and all the nuns there had voices a little more mature than that one.
I think so. But yeah, she is a sudden sensation coming out of Italy. She'll be doing her tour of the United States.
Oh, probably, that's great. I look forward to that.
Pretty soon. So the Honorable James Clyburn here with us for the first half hour. Then we're going to be joined by Ryan Koronowski from Climate Progress to talk about that climate change report that came out yesterday. So the big news on the Hill, I guess, is this, Congressman, this special committee on Benghazi. Why do we need a special committee?
We don't. We've had 3 or 4 investigations of this. They've been investigated by a Republican, people of Republican backgrounds who are experienced in this field. And I don't know why we have to have a spectacle on Capitol Hill. And I've come out against it. I've said to everybody, I think this is all about making headlines. This is all about trying to stay away from a substantive agenda for the American people and try to keep people's attentions focused on stuff that means absolutely nothing in their daily lives. And so I am dead set against it. If my side were to even think about it, I said to them, let's have an ethics type committee. That is, even members on both sides, and you cannot be issuing subpoenas unless at least one person from the other side agrees. So if you've got 7 and 7, it means that a subpoena would need 8 to 6. Yeah. And that way, at least one person on the other side would join in that. Anything else would be partisan, and we ought not participate.
Well, I was just that's the key question. Will the leader, Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, will she even appoint members to this committee? Why? Is that a possibility that there won't be any Democrats on the committee?
That is a possibility, and
because that would show that this is just a real political thing. Would you?
That's exactly right.
Would you support that?
Yes, I told Nancy that. Twice on yesterday, as recent as last evening.
She's already got the message. Huh?
Oh, yeah, from me, anyway.
Yeah. And let me ask, it seems to me there's another angle of this. So Darrell Issa has had, I think, 13 hearings. Right. Totally. There have been 13 hearings. I know that's the number. I don't know how many Darrell Issa's had, but most of them have been his oversight committee hearing. Now, when John Boehner says we need a select committee, isn't he sort of saying Darrell Issa didn't do his job?
Yes, exactly what he's saying, that he's become somewhat of a joke. He is very embarrassing to them. And so they've gone and gotten this young, clean-cut guy who happens to be from South Carolina. He's a nice guy. I talk to him almost every day. We are poles apart politically, and irrespective of the fact that he's a nice guy from South Carolina, he is participating in a charade, which I will not support.
Right. And Boehner seems to be saying to ISA, you've had your chance and you blew it, and so we're just going to go off.
Absolutely.
Go off with somebody else. Well, they're making it. They're making a political football, and they have. Now, you mentioned other things that the other thing this is doing, of course, is taking away from the agenda. They could be doing immigration reform. Right.
Immigration. I mean, look, there's bipartisan support big time for immigration. And if you get outside of the Hill, there's bipartisan support for the minimum wage. So let's have some discussions on what will make big differences in people's lives. A minimum wage raise will take 10 million people out of poverty overnight. So let's have that discussion and stop all this foolishness.
Maryland, the state of Maryland yesterday, Martin O'Malley signed the legislation raising minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. They've done it in California. They've done it in Seattle. I guess, Congress, that's where the action is taking place. Sadly.
Absolutely. Right? And we ought to be doing similar stuff here on the Hill.
President Obama came out with his report yesterday on climate change. Yeah. There's another issue where if maybe an investigator committee on climate change will say what's happening to us and what should we be doing about it.
Well, you raise an interesting point. I do believe that if you're going to have a select committee, that is one area where we ought to have a select committee. There are some big debates taking place in the country around the science of all this. So that's how you appoint select committees. Hey, this is a international problem. And all you got to do is pick up your newspapers almost any morning, listen to shows like yours, and you hear about these problems all around the world. Let's have a select committee on climate change and see can we reach some consensus as to what's causing it and what we can do about it. And I think it has a lot to do with our own actions as individuals.
It certainly seems to me that if there's one issue that should not be politicized, it's the survival of the planet.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat.
As well as the health of those, as you can hear this morning, my sinuses are driving me crazy. So I really want to know, can we do something about this?
But, when the sea level comes up and Miami's underwater, there are going to be Republicans hurting as well as Democrats.
That's exactly right.
I mean,
absolutely.
So I have to go back to this special committee because there's one question I forgot I wanted to ask you, and that is this subpoena. Actually, it's not the select committee, but Darrell Issa subpoenaed Secretary of State John Kerry. Now, you're part of the leadership. You've been committee chair in the House. Subpoena is the last thing you do, not the first thing you do normally, isn't it? What's a common congressional courtesy, as I'm asking?
Is to invite whatever member may be the subject of your inquiry, invite that person to your committee to explain him or herself. Okay. That's the first thing.
Yeah. Just a common courtesy of invitation.
The second thing would be to invite again, maybe in writing. But you invite. And
try to work out a schedule,
that's
right?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Your schedule, their schedule.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
And if there's some recalcitrance detected in the process, then you start going to your committee and you says, let's have a subpoena here to compel this person to come forward. Now, do you do that in a partisan way? ISA has been sending out subpoenas without the knowledge of the Democrats on the committee. They find out about it when they read it in the newspapers. So the American people are tired and sick of this. They want to see us get their business done. They would love for it to be bipartisan, but most times it's not.
When we come back, I want to hear more, Congressman, about some of your blessed experiences in your time in the United States Congress. That's the name of the Congressman's new book, Blessed Experiences. I'll get the whole title here again. Genuinely Southern and Proudly Black, the Honorable James Clyburn. Very seldom that you get a chance to ask a question or raise a comment. with a leader of the United States Congress, but he's here and eager to hear from you at 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You make it sound very easy to take these 90-degree turns in your career. You went from engineering to law. But there's an awful lot of people at that age who feel they're on a track, they've invested time in learning a career, and they need to see it through to the end, or maybe their parents are pushing them to stay in one route. What is your advice for a young person?
Stay away from your parents.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
My mom is a pretty spectacular human being. We essentially came to the United States as refugees. And that is when I really got to understand who my mom was as a person. Being a refugee in a foreign country, you would think that it would affect you so much. It was like my mom, nothing changed for my mom. What was really at her core and her center was always being with her kids and getting to spend time with them and making sure that they were okay and making sure that they could still go out and play soccer. I knew that if my goal was to go to Liberia and to work on economic justice so that, kids could go to school and have access to a doctor if they have malaria, that if I bet on their moms, we win.
I think I just come from a lineage of kick-ass women is all I can say. My grandmother came to this country from Mexico as a single mom with 5 children. And I, have an amazing mother who had 3 children, was going to school, working full-time. I mean, almost my story. But she did that and got her bachelor's degree at 40. And so I had a great role model. When I came home and told my mom I was pregnant, her response to me wasn't, your life is over. Her response to me is, well, I want a plan. You need to, let me know what you're going to do about this because you're now responsible for somebody else.
I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents were very proud of it. They both had to work. My mom in a factory and my dad in the supermarket, and I was their success story. However, on graduation day, they said, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be a businessman? What are you going to, lawyer? I said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And they said, what? My parents were very much opposed to this, and it was very difficult.
How much pressure did they put on you?
Tremendous pressure. Up until we were leaving from O'Hare Airport for me to go to Peru, my mother questioning me, like, where is Peru? You've never been out of the country. What do you know? Do they have doctors? Do they speak English there? What are you going to eat? You like my cooking? I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pioneer. Why do you always have to be the pioneer? Let them do it. Let them come back, and then you go. I said, no, I want to be the first to go.
I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, so there was a lot of gang activity. And one of my friends actually was murdered on a basketball court when a 15-year-old child shot him in the back of the head. And I was just hopeless. And my mom actually, she brought me to a place of empathy for the kids who were involved in actually murdering him. Because my mom sort of said, look, where do you think those kids are coming from? And then she said, so if you're angry about it, do something. Actually change the way this world works.
This is the Bill Press Show.
24 minutes after the hour. Climate change coming up in the next half hour. Meanwhile, he is genuinely Southern. He is proudly black, and he has had many blessed experiences, which he talks about in his new book, The Honorable James Clyburn. And we have a link to that book up on our website, of course. Great book to read, great book to buy. most importantly. And you can get, of course, at your local bookstore or on Amazon.com or any of those Barnes & Noble, also any of the websites. So when were you elected to the...
To Congress, I was elected in 1992, took office in 93.
Were you in the South Carolina legislature first?
No. This is my first elective office.
Yeah.
I did run a state agency in South Carolina. I was on the staff of John West when he was governor. And West and I became just fast friends. Yeah. In fact, his widow passed away on yesterday morning. John and Lois West became great friends to me and my wife, Emily. And John West, of course, provided me with a lot of those blessed experiences.
Yeah. So if you're elected in 92, do the math. This is how many terms now?
January will be my 22nd. I'll finish my 22nd year.
22nd year.
Yeah, so I'm in my 11th term.
Congress has changed a lot, I imagine. Since
my Lord, yes, it has. Back in 1992, remember that's the year that Bill Clinton became president.
Absolutely.
And as you can imagine, he defeated a sitting president, the first George Bush.
H.W. Bush.
George H.W. Bush. And, of course, I came in on that wave. Yeah. And
great time
started to recede 2 years later with Newt Gingrich's revolution. But it's a good time to be serving because I think that I learned a lot about the country. I learned a lot about people. When you're riding high after 92 and fall so low after 94,
right.
You learn a lot.
And then come back.
But
even under Newt Gingrich as Speaker, things were not as acrimonious as they are today. Is that correct?
That's true. But the acrimony started with Newt's activities when he took on Speaker Wright. And he brought in a new style that became the order of the day. And we're still suffering from the remnants thereof. Now, around the same time, the internet was exploding. And I believe that the difference in now and for many times before, or many periods in our history before, I think is driven by the internet. The 30-second soundbite, the 24-hour news cycle, these things have revolutionized public service in such a way it's going to take some getting used to.
And also with Gingrich, it sort of came in like the perpetual campaign.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, there's no time
Every
off.
2 years is bad enough, but when you're doing it all during your service, you don't have time to sit down and reason with people because you're always reacting to that soundbite. Mm-hmm. And that soundbite can kill you. It's like a snake bite when it comes to politics.
How much time, we just have about 30 seconds, but how much of a problem is it the money people have to raise today?
It's a big problem. But it's always been a problem in politics. And the Supreme Court is not making it any better.
Well, they're making it worse and worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in terms of corporate money and terms of unlimited
and
money.
Determining a corporation as an individual, allowing all of this money to be in the system non-transparent. It's just a problem.
Absolutely. Honorable James Clyburn, thank you so much for all your good years and all your great leadership, and thanks for your time this morning. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me. Very good.
Right. Blessed Experiences. Get the book, link on our website.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I talk to undergraduates and graduate students who are desperate to go out and start something and build something and be the one to come up with that silver bullet solution. And I just want to say, slow down.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis. Most of the people you're talking to who want to come into the social change space, are they prepared?
If you're early in your career, there's a couple of really important things to do. The first one is just to shut the hell up and don't talk for about 5 years and work really, really hard. The only way you're going to be given more difficult things to do is by solving the ones you're already given. And if you're somebody who's always complaining or wants to be promoted above where they really are, you can't learn enough to start to take on a greater pool of responsibilities.
Advice you would give a person coming out of college is go work for other people, make your mistakes on their dime.
That sounds like me, absolutely.
It does sound like you.
And you know who that came from is one of my board members, Eric Buttline. Eric had seen me start a few companies as a young kid. I mean, I started my first real company when I was 16. And Eric said, "Chid, do me a favor. I know you have this thing in your head that you think you're this great entrepreneur, but like go work for somebody for a little while and just learn how things are supposed to be done. And when you're done with that, let's have another conversation about, you know, your next venture."
And I think another thing to remember, and this is something that I've really only learned in the past couple of years, is that although the problems are urgent and so important for us to address, I need to have more patience. I'm not going to solve those problems on my own. You're not going to solve those problems on your own. I'm an apprentice in all of this. You know, I'm an apprentice in life. I'm an apprentice in problem solving. I'm not going to change the world until I'm at least 65. That's my goal at this point.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org to let us know your thoughts.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
On a Wednesday morning, May 7, 33 minutes after the hour now. Here we go. The Bill Press Show rolling right on from our studio on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Brought to you today by the American Federation of Government Employees, the good men and women working for the federal government. This is, by the way, Public Service Recognition Week, a big ceremony yesterday on Capitol Hill saluting federal employees. And J. David Cox, president of AFGE, was there, one of the speakers, and we're very proud to have them as sponsors of the program. For more information about their good work in many different areas of the federal government, you can visit their website at afge.org. Speaking of news from the federal government, yesterday, big news, which was the lead story on the network news last night, every one of them. And the lead article on all the front page of all the major papers this morning, New York Times, Washington Post included, the White House report on climate change. Ryan Koronowski is co-editor of Climate Progress at the Center for American Progress, and he joins us in studio this morning. Hey, Ryan, good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
Did you write this report?
I did not.
You did not.
Much smarter than I did.
But you know all about it at any rate. So we talked a lot about the report at the briefing yesterday, and the headline seems to be, right, that climate change is real, it's now, and it's impacting every corner of America. That kind of sum it up?
That's basically it.
Where are we seeing the impacts of climate change? Like,
everywhere. It starts with extreme heat and these heat waves that we're seeing. But one of the biggest takeaways from the report is the water cycle. So you'll have these much more serious torrential downpours. Predominantly in the Northeast, but also I don't know if you saw last week in Florida when in 24 hours 2 feet of rain just got dropped. So one thing that's happening is that as we emit more carbon dioxide, it traps more heat in the atmosphere, and that causes the atmosphere to allow it to hold more water. And so when that happens, places that tend to be drier, that more of that water evaporates out of the soil, and so you see these longer droughts that are more serious. And when it does rain, it rains a lot more, and so even in the places that are dry, that the soil is not able to take in as much of that water, and so that's not good for farmers. It's not good for people who manage water systems and reservoirs. It just rushes right off. It gets rid of topsoil. In the places that are already wet, that's pretty bad. They get these really serious downpours.
The dry areas get drier and the wet areas get wetter. And and the more extreme storms that we see, Hurricane Sandy, climate change related, correct?
It makes them more serious. So one thing that the earlier reports focused a lot more on forecasts, and they said this is what we think is going to happen. Yeah. This report focuses more on what people are actually seeing. And one of the surprises from what didn't happen that they thought was going to happen was they've observed more sea level rise than they initially anticipated. And so like in a Hurricane Sandy and in other storms, that storm surge is really serious. And one thing people hear about a couple inches of sea level rise happening, and how is that a serious threat? That doesn't seem like too much. But when you have a storm like that, it's sort of like, I don't know if you have, I'm sure people have kids, and if you're giving a child a bath, and you fill up the bathtub about halfway and they're splashing around, and that's not a big deal. You fill that bathtub all the way up to the top and they're splashing around, the bathroom gets wet. So that storm surge from those storms with sea level rise makes it a lot more serious.
Well, what about, there are cities particularly on the East Coast, right, that are vulnerable, that are the most vulnerable to sea level rise. Miami.
Right. I think but other cities in Florida, I think St. Petersburg and New Orleans.
Right. Which is below sea level anyhow.
Right.
Right, the city. Virginia Beach. I keep seeing Virginia Beach mentioned as. So, what can these cities do about it?
You mean other than lower global carbon emissions?
Yeah, right.
And adaptation is becoming more and more of a byword for people who care about climate.
I saw a reporter last night in Miami, and they're looking about these high rises and saying Miami's worried that they're going to lose, the downtown Miami. So they're talking about building massive dikes or. Why not just deal with climate change?
Right. Yeah, it actually ends up being a lot cheaper if you to reduce those carbon emissions. But in the meantime, we can't ignore people that are going to be impacted by these.
Okay. So is it too late? Is it possible to like in the front page of Washington Post just points out this all these things that are happening. Boom, 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 boom. From the report, right? And and we're doing basically nothing today. I mean, is it too late to reverse this trend, or is this just sort of the way we're going?
So, this is a bit of a conservative report, but it does look at two scenarios. One a sort of lower emission scenario and one a higher emission scenario. The higher emission scenario, which isn't as high as it possibly could go, but that's a business as usual. What happens if we continue emitting the way we do? It's basically these impacts are going to happen. It's just how bad it's going to be. We can lower emissions to that lower scenario, and these impacts that I've just been discussing get a lot better and a lot more manageable than they were. And so the report sort of hazily outlines about a decade. In the next decade, if we can significantly start to address our emissions, that's when we start to see a little bit more of that.
But what does that mean? Does that mean no more coal-powered plants? Does that mean getting rid of the ones we have? Does it mean cleaning up the ones we have? Does it mean a carbon tax?
It could be any of those things. So the administration next month will be announcing draft rules for carbon regulations on existing coal power plants and existing gas power plants to try to start to rein that in. This is through the authority under the Clean Air Act. And earlier, a few years ago, they started to address vehicle emissions. So you're starting to see increased fuel economy from the nation's vehicle fleet. It's going to take everything. It's going to take personal decisions at home to start to watch how much electricity you use, and energy efficiency is one of the hidden areas that makes sense for not wasting money.
All right, now Republicans came out right away. At least some of them did. The Cato Institute came out right away and said they accused the White House of scare tactics. Right.
Right.
Is that what this report's all about?
I think it should be alarming, but it's not scare tactics. This is a pretty serious.
It's scary.
It is scary, but it's not. It's written by people who are alarmed by the data, I would assume, but it's not written by alarmists. This is pretty established data. This is not anything actually. It was organized by 60 coordinators that relied on 300 experts from not just academia, not just government entities, but also in the private sector. There were two people from two different oil companies that actually contributed to and oversaw parts of this report.
So it was not written by White House staff?
No. This is not written by White House staff.
And if it scares people, it should scare people.
It should.
I guess. And then there are those who dismiss it as pure politics, right, of the moment. None more colorfully, perhaps, than Mitch McConnell, Republican Senate leader, yesterday. Here's with his snide comments.
I'm sure he'll get loud cheers from liberal elites, from the kind of people who leave a giant carbon footprint and then lecture everybody else about low-flow toilets.
I don't know whether he was talking about Al Gore or not, but at any rate, I mean, yeah, that kind of a comment. But what McConnell and Inhofe was also, James Inhofe, a Republican senator from Oklahoma, were saying that this is just Obama trying to come up with a good issue to run on in 2014.
And you heard people on Fox News yesterday also saying that this was going to be something to distract people from the real issue at hand, which is Benghazi.
Which is Benghazi,
of course.
Yes, right. Yeah.
That's what I think that's part of their playbook. This was not a partisan issue as of 6 years ago. John McCain ran in 2008 saying that we should be addressing this problem through a cap and trade system.
He and Obama both in 2008.
It wasn't an
said,
issue.
Climate change is real. It's human induced, and we got to do something about it.
Yeah. Cap and trade system is a market-based approach. It's not, a carbon tax. A lot of people on the climate activism side would prefer a more direct carbon tax that addresses it a little bit more directly. But a cap and trade system, that's what George H.W. Bush used to address acid rain and other emissions, and it's just a way to get the business community much more flexibly able to reduce their emissions, and they tend to prefer that.
Here's the thing that I found, and I want to get your comments on this when we come back from the break. The thing that I found the most depressing about all of this news yesterday, and that is what a small percentage of the American people still feel, how few of the American people still feel this is a serious problem. We're just not People just don't seem to get it. Maybe this report can change that. 866-55-PRESS is our toll-free number. Very, very, very important report from the White House yesterday. Ryan Koronowski from Climate Progress, the Center for American Progress, thinkprogress.org, in studio with us. I'm sure you got lots of questions about this report. Here's the man with the answers. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV. .org.
FEMA and the ad.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
12 minutes now before the top of the hour. Headline in the New York Times this morning: U.S. climate has already changed, the study finds. Speaking about the White House study released yesterday, citing heat and floods. Ryan Koronowski, this is his baby, his issue. He's the co-editor of Climate Progress at the Center for American Progress. Again, Ryan, thanks for coming in. Bill from Chicago has a question. Hello, Bill. Good morning.
Bill, good morning. Ryan, good morning. The question I have is, we're seeing so much of the influence with the increase in temperatures and the storms like Sandy that went up the coast. How about what went on in the Midwest and the middle part of the country this year? Is that an effect of what global warming has done to the Pacific?
All the cold and the snow, huh? Yeah, cold temps and the snow and the ice. Ryan, thanks, right. Bill, so much for your question. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Bill. That was the major headline in terms of weather so far this year.
But it seems contradictory. If we're talking about global warming and you see more cold, doesn't that mean there's not global warming?
Well, the problem with the term is that it's global warming. And that's, you need to take a global average of all the temperatures across the entire planet. We had some of our warmest months so far this year, and 2013 was one of the warmer years on record. Yes, it was very cold. I was here in D.C. It was a longer winter than we remember. But one of the reasons that it felt so cold and so long is that we had very, very mild winters over the last decade or so. But you do have to remember that it is one half of one part of one continent. The western part of the United States, California had its warmest January on record. A lot of the western parts of the U.S.
Alaska did too, didn't it?
Alaska had incredibly warm temperatures. It reached 60 degrees in January or February, and that actually impacted. I don't know if you know the Iditarod dog sled race.
Right.
They had some pretty serious heat waves. A lot of the snow melted, and there were these very alarming pictures of these dog sled teams trying to get across very rocky and dusty areas with no snow. There was no sled. It was just it was either just sheer ice because everything had melted and then froze, or they just melted and there was nothing to sled on. So this is part of this kind of some scientists are calling it a kind of a drunken jet stream. The jet stream, which that usually brings a pretty steady and reliable wave of air through from west to east. Some of the warming that has come up into Alaska and parts of Canada has kind of pushed down some of that cold weather into the Midwest, and so the Great Lakes are still pretty cold right now. But you need to look at the larger context.
Got it. Now, I want to go back to this poll that I mentioned. It's a Pew Research poll, which shows that most Americans are still pretty skeptical about climate change. In the United States, only 40% of Americans say that global climate change is a major threat to their country. So this report says just the opposite, but only 40% of Americans believe global climate change is a threat to the United States. If you go to Europe, 50% of Germans and the French say this is a serious problem. 60% of people in Spain and Italy, 70% of people in Japan, but only 40% of Americans. What's going on? Why don't we get it? And Congress is never going to act unless more people are demanding change.
Absolutely. And, we were talking about this the other day in the office. So it'd be interesting to take a look at fossil fuel contributions in total for all of these countries to see if there's any sort of tracking of what's actually impacting these public opinion numbers. But, in terms of what is a serious threat to your nation, who's in charge of that for the most, that would be the military. And the military is actually seriously looking at climate change as a threat multiplier, as they call it. As they respond to disasters, around the world. There was the hurricane in the Philippines, and they're kind of the first on the on the list to respond to these things. And they see climate change as a very big issue for them, and so the Pentagon is the biggest consumer of fossil fuels on the planet, and they're truly trying to address that. In part because they don't want to be reliant on fossil fuels, but in part because they do see it as a serious threat, both abroad, and we were talking about Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
Norfolk is one of the biggest naval bases in the world.
Right.
And Norfolk is seriously impacted by sea level rise and will continue to be so, and they don't want to be dealing with that or relying on a civilian electric grid that could be just knocked out and then by a passing storm.
Yeah. Well, it's out there now, the report. I guess the best place, Ryan, of course, you can go to thinkprogress.org and to Climate Progress. I'm sure you have your commentary on the report. And you can go to the whitehouse.gov, I guess, also and get the entire report, correct?
Yeah, I would actually encourage people to take a look at the report. It's actually very easily and beautifully laid out for kind of a scary way.
I agree. I did it yesterday on the web. I mean, you can get into it and see the highlights and see all the different chapters. And you can name your region of the country, your state, where you are, and find out the impacts in your area. It's very, very well done at whitehouse.gov. Ryan Koronowski, nice to meet you. Nice of you to come in today. Thanks for all your good information.
Thank you so much, Bill.
I'll be back to tell you what the president's up to today.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, I know you like the first 2 hours, and you're going to love the third hour. Of course, you can stay with us on Free Speech TV. Hopefully that'll change soon. But in the meantime, you can switch over to our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. And in our third hour together, Chris Moody will be here from Yahoo News as a friend of Bill the entire hour. And then Benjamin Goad from The Hill will join us to talk about the Supreme Court decision on prayer at city council meetings. So hour number 3, lots to talk about. Coming up.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I probably would make a time machine. I would make medicine for the sick. I'd probably invent something new. If I could have an extra 5 years to live. You said 5, right? 5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much. I would get more hamsters. I would probably want to go looking for dark matter. I think I'd go looking for aliens. If I could live an extra 5 years. I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime.
I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna. I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed. If I had 5 more extra years to live, I would be the boss of all the chipmunks. Eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas. I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
This is the Bill Press Show.
President Obama gets a daily briefing at 10 o'clock this morning. 11 o'clock, he leaves the White House on his way down to Arkansas. He will be visiting victims and the first responders from the horrible storms and flooding in Arkansas a week or so ago. And then he is off to Los Angeles, California. 3 days in California. A series of fundraising events for the Democratic Senate and Democratic Congressional Campaign Committees, starting with one this evening in Los Angeles at a private residence, and then he'll be attending the USC Shoah Foundation dinner tonight. Chris Moody
is the Bill
Friend of
Press
Bill.
Show.
Next.
these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power.
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all of the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Here we are, your Monica Lewinsky free morning show. Yeah, I don't give a damn what she tells Vanity Fair. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you. It is the Bill Press Show coming to you live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. on this Wednesday morning, Wednesday, May 7th. So good to see you today. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being part of the program. Remember, you can really be part of the program by giving us a call, asking your questions, making your comments, snide or otherwise, at 866-55-PRESS. That's our toll-free number. Send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/BillPressShow. We can't get through all the big stories of the day without the help of some friends. No better friend than Chris Moody with Yahoo News here in studio with us for this hour as a friend of Bill. Welcome back, Chris. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Bill. Great to be back.
You're looking
Got
good.
Some stories to tell.
I know. Can't wait to hear. You've been, you're looking good and fresh and relaxed. No, you had some time off or anything? I don't know.
No time off. Just working hard on the whiskey trail.
On the whiskey trail, right. Some people go on the campaign trail. Chris Moody goes on the whiskey trail. We'll get into that in just a second here. Peter Ogburn's still on vacation. He'll be back tomorrow. Lisa Murphy has been running the show for the last week, doing a great job.
Hey, good morning.
And Alicia Cruz, as always, great job on the phones. There for your calls at 866-55-PRESS. And our videographer, Cyprian Bolding, worldwide on a video stream, thanks to Cyprian at TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. Yeah, I was just watching the morning shows this morning, Chris. So many people, like right now, Fox News, right? Of course,
There's
Fox
Monica,
News
yeah.
is Monica. But CNN's been talking about it. MSNBC's been talking about it. I decided I am not going to talk about it other than to make fun of the whole story, which the late night comics did last night as well.
Oh, I'll bet they did.
She says it's time to burn the beret and bury the blue dress, As Jimmy Fallon said last night. Yeah, I think we did that 15 years ago. Right? You know what I mean? Okay, Monica.
Right.
We're over it. So yesterday. Conan O'Brien had fun with it last night, too.
Speaking of Bill Clinton, I can't believe this is back in the news, but Monica Lewinsky is in the new issue of Vanity Fair talking about the Bill Clinton scandal. Yeah. Unfortunately, they decided to name the piece Monica Opens Up.
You know, she's going to be the whole round of a whole new round of jokes, but the butt of a whole new round of jokes, right? But
Yeah, you can't escape the brand. Sometimes it's so ingrained.
I know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what good she thinks she's doing by opening up, if you will, 15 years later. But at any rate, do you want to read it? You can read it. I'm not going to read it. So Chris is here with us this first half hour. We will be joined a little bit later by Benjamin Goad from The Hill, and we'll get right to it. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Peter always does the full court press. I just do a shorter version of it when he's going.
Let's see it.
But this is the one story that caught my attention yesterday. I don't know whether you found this to be true, but anyhow, the headline in the New York Times is, "Want a good idea? Take a walk." And the scientists have done surveys proving that actually taking a walk can significantly increase your creativity. They went out to these college campuses, they got these kids, and they gave them a test. And they took the test just sitting, or they took a test actually on the treadmill while they were walking. And their scores were significantly higher when they were walking. Their brains got moving or something like this. And they also point out that there are a lot of writers who, if they get, what's the word?
Writer's block?
Writer's block, thank you. Yeah, writer's
speaker's block, right?
Or speaker's, yes, exactly, thank you. Writer's block. Or, they can't figure out where to go with this novel or where to go with this next character or something like that. Just take time out, go out, for a little walk, and come back, and boom, there it is.
I'm going to take that advice.
Some have their best ideas at walking. Isn't that interesting?
Does it count for a Segway?
No.
Right.
You got to be moving.
Move those legs. All right.
So if I disappear here for a few seconds and go out of the studio, walk around the block, and come back, it may be the way to go.
We'll know where you are.
So you want a good idea? You're stuck? Take a walk. Good advice.
People have told me to take a hike, but that's different.
That's a little different, right? So I love this headline. How can you beat this? My spring break with big liquor. Now I want to. Did Yahoo News actually pay you to go on the whiskey trail?
They did indeed.
Oh my!
And I will tell you, Bill,
journalism is
there is a policy angle to this story. Yes, we're back on top. So I spent an entire week on the American Whiskey Trail in Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee, visiting American distilleries with the liquor lobby. Basically, a group called the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States.
Yeah, right.
And they represent big liquor in Washington. And they took us on a wonderful trip. It was kind of like getting the golden ticket to go to Willy Wonka's factory. For a political journalist, yeah.
Was there a group of you?
There's about 17 reporters.
No, really?
That's right, a whole bus full. With a couple liquor lobbyists, and we rode around the South and drank whiskey and had the time of our lives, as one would, of course. Right. Every morning we'd wake up, we'd get on the bus, we'd go to a factory, we'd get back on the bus, we'd go to another factory, drink some whiskey. It was a lot like the presidential campaign trail, but with less drinking. Really?
Yeah. Well, they do that out in, of course, in California, where I'm from, right? In the Napa Valley and Sonoma County and everything. Wine tours, wine tasting. I mean, that's a big, huge tradition out there. Is it a tradition in the South in terms of what do you call it, the liquor belt or the whiskey belt?
I like the liquor belt, the whiskey belt. Well, they're trying to make this a thing. They're trying to solidify American brands.
I mean, do they have tasting rooms? Do people stop
absolutely.
at these distilleries?
And people have been doing this for a long time. But as far as a branded trail, it's the American Heritage Whiskey Trail, basically, and they've invested in these new welcome centers and these new tasting rooms. Even the smallest distilleries have them, and you go in and they give you a range of whiskeys to try, and you leave much happier than when you arrived.
Well, yeah, but tasting wine is one thing. Tasting whiskey is another. I mean,
I mean, you are tasting small amounts. And if you think about it, a glass of wine really has about the same amount of alcohol as a small serving of whiskey. So it's not that much.
But you're not drinking a glass of wine. You're taking a sip of wine.
This is true.
Right.
Right. And so
So what did you learn? Is the American distillery business healthy and booming?
It is. In
growing?
recent years, it is actually booming like crazy, especially bourbon and Tennessee whiskey. About 30 years ago, they were kind of down in the doldrums, and we started to see premium brands of foreign spirits, cognac, vodka from Russia, and they only recently, in the about 80s and 90s, began experimenting with premium level bourbon, being able to sell something for $40 or $50 or even $60 a bottle. And now they're just booming. They just, the American, I think it's whiskey and bourbon, just surpassed $1 billion in exports just this past year. I mean, and they're trying to solidify these brands so that if you're a European and you're like, you know what, I want some Kentucky bourbon, or I want some Tennessee sippin' whiskey, and they're trying to promote this. So, the policy angle here.
Yeah, I was going to get to the
a lot of people have asked me,
angle.
why does something as wonderful as bourbon need a lobbyist? Well, they do. They're trying to promote these brands abroad and trying to grease the wheels for further exports. Now, here's the fun part of the story. The USDA gives big liquor a subsidy every year. This year, they gave them about $400,000 a year to promote American liquor brands abroad. And one way they do that is taking foreign reporters on trips like the one I went on last week to see the distilleries. So part of my trip was actually taxpayer funded. Not my own journey, but the reporters from foreign outlets, they paid, the USDA actually paid for the transportation for them. Which I think some people will find very interesting, perhaps troubling.
Yeah.
But, I mean, compared to other industries, it's a drop in the barrel. Did you know big wine gets something like $6 to $7 million a year from taxpayers? Cotton gets, I think, about $17 million. Even the pet food industry gets a subsidy of $1.5 million. That compared to liquor, about $400,000.
Right. So big whiskey gets $400,000?
That's right. That's right.
Where's the best? So we don't make any Scotch, I guess, right? Do we?
Well, the Scotch would be made in Scotland, of course, just because it's a regional name for the whiskey.
Okay.
But yeah, in Kentucky they make bourbon, and in Tennessee they make mostly whiskey.
Whiskey. Okay.
Yeah.
So the best bourbon is Kentucky, no doubt, right?
I would say so. That's personal opinion.
Yeah.
You can make bourbon anywhere.
But you've been on the trail. I haven't.
Yeah. The reason they make it in that area is because there's a huge limestone shelf in Kentucky and Tennessee that filters out the iron from the water. And you need a low amount or no iron in the water to make really good whiskey. And that's why they have them there, because they got that limestone shelf.
And what do they make in Virginia?
Well, in Virginia...
why were you in Virginia? Right.
This is really fascinating, actually. So George Washington, after his presidency, he started a distillery on his land in Mount Vernon, on his plantation. And he realized very quickly that it about doubled his profits for his plantation when he started making whiskey. And this is the old-fashioned way, by hand, right? And after he died, it fell into disrepair and actually burned down and was lost to history. Only the foundations in the ground were left. Well, in the late 90s, the Distilled Spirits Council, this group that I traveled with, gave a grant to Mount Vernon's estate, and they dug it up and they rebuilt the distillery just as it had been built when Washington was alive. And they still, to this day, they make whiskey just like Washington made it, and you can try it, and it tastes just the same way it did 200 years ago.
Whoa.
It's a really neat experience, and it's just a couple miles outside of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I've been to Mount Vernon. I don't remember that
because
at all.
It's brand new. So they just started distilling, I think it was in 2006, and it takes a couple of years to get the whiskey through the barrel aging process. So it was just about a year or two ago that they got their first brown whiskey, and I'll tell you, it tastes pretty good.
Now, how long have you been back from this whiskey?
Just about a week and a half.
And have you sobered up?
I've sobered up. I've been to church, and I've been eating my vegetables. So this is I feel much better now.
You didn't bring any wild juice in this morning?
No, I didn't. But I did bring some whiskey from Kentucky, which I will share with your colleague Peter Ogburn when he comes back. This is 82 proof larceny whiskey. So while we were on the trail, you know how reporters...
82 proof?
It's delicious. It's good for you, especially for breakfast. Well, so you know how they give reporters covering events lanyards with press credentials?
Yes.
We had lanyards full of little bottles of bourbon that we carried around our necks like cowbells.
No, really?
And it made it for very easy access.
Did you get back in time for the exciting news of John Boehner's appointing of a special committee to investigate?
I did indeed. Benghazi, which we will. They'll vote on at the end of the week here. The Republicans are meeting this morning, just down the street from this studio, to talk out the details. I plan to go down there and talk to them about it. You know what I'm interested in, Bill, is talking to the guys from the 90s that did a lot of the investigations against Clinton. Some of them overstepped, and they know it, and they're trying to find a way here to be very careful not to look crazy, I think, and they have to be careful about that.
What I'm interested in is whether Democrats will name any members to this committee.
It seems as though they will. It seems as though Nancy Pelosi is eager to get some Democrats on her panel. This morning, Pelosi sent a letter with Hoyer, her number 2, to John Boehner, asking to have an even amount of Republicans and Democrats on the panel. Now we'll see what happens, because when Pelosi had a climate change panel, I believe it was 9 Democrats and 6 Republicans, and maybe Republicans will look to that, or maybe they'll make it fair. I'm not sure yet.
James Clyburn, who's the assistant Democratic leader who was in studio with us last hour, said that his advice to Leader Pelosi was, number 1, don't appoint anybody. Number 2, if you do have a panel, have it like the ethics panel. Even number of members from each party, and you have to have at least one member of the other party agree before you can issue any subpoena for tests. In other words, follow the rules of the ethics committee as opposed to normal rules. But the other question I have about this is, we've had 13 hearings on Benghazi, most of them held by Darrell Issa with his government oversight committee. Boehner's announcement that he was going to have the special committee came a day after ISIS subpoenaed John Kerry, or maybe the same day that he subpoenaed John Kerry for yet another Benghazi hearing. And then suddenly Boehner appoints another committee. Isn't that kind of a slap at ISA?
I'm not sure if it's a slap at ISA.
Why do we need another committee if ISA is doing his job? Right?
It's a good question to ask Issa how he feels about that.
I think it's a good question you ought to ask Boehner today, or Issa.
He's doing a press conference at 10 o'clock this morning. I think it'd be interesting
go for it.
to
But I
ask.
mean, seriously,
absolutely. So they had the new document that came out.
If I were Issa, I'd be pissed. And I think Boehner is basically saying, hey, dude, you had all these hearings, you didn't find out that...
And they put together a bipartisan report that both parties signed on to.
But you didn't get to the bottom of it, so I'm going to give somebody else a job. I don't know. Just wondering what it all means.
Let's find out.
All right. You are on it. You are on the from the Whiskey Trail to the Benghazi Trail. Chris Moody, Yahoo News. Here is a friend of Bill. You can jump in anytime. We got a seat at the table for you, always at 866-55-PRESS. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Oh, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork, loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look, your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach
likes
your kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen. petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Change the world.
This is the Bill Press Show.
26 minutes after the hour with Chris Moody from Yahoo News here as a friend of Bill covering the landscape here, covering the waterfront before we're joined by Benjamin Goad to talk particularly about the Supreme Court decision this week on prayer at public meetings. We'll get into that after the break at the half hour. Chris, the other big story, of course, yesterday, a headline in the New York Times, a headline in the Washington Post.
Front page.
Front page, and topped all the evening newscasts last week. This climate change report coming out of the White House saying the climate change is real, it's here now, and it's impacting every area of the United States in a pretty serious way. It's going to make any difference, this report?
In the short term, perhaps. I mean, at some point, you can't continue to ignore these reports that keep coming out day after day, year after year. The question is, will members of Congress read it? For example, I was on the Senate side of Capitol Hill yesterday. Someone asked Lindsey Graham about the report. He asked, have you read it? And he's like, well, I saw the movie. It's like, well, are you going to read it? I mean, will they ignore it?
He meant
I think he meant Al Gore's film. I'm going to guess.
Right.
But he said it was on his desk and he'll look at it. Now, will they digest it? I don't know. And then will they do anything about it? As we talked about the last time I was on the show, it's very difficult to get big things done, of course, in Washington. Big problems require big solutions. Does Washington have what it takes to do anything? I don't have that confidence. Maybe other people disagree with me.
What I found interesting is some people came out right away, critics, and said the White House is just using scare tactics. Well, I got to tell you, when you look at this report and its findings, it is pretty scary.
Sure.
Right? You know, and if the American people are scared by what they read in that report, then I think that's good. Maybe they'll demand some action.
But even something as small as cap and trade, you can't even get enough Democrats to pass the thing. So
absolutely. No. We'll be right back with Benjamin Goad from The Hill. Stay here with Chris Moody and all of you.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the area.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Let's make it 33 minutes after the hour. Wednesday, May 7, the Bill Press Show coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Brought to you today by the American Federation of Teachers, good men and women of the AFT. America's teachers making a difference in the classroom every day. You bet, under President Randy Weingarten. And you can find out more about their good work at their website, aft.org. Chris Moody here from Yahoo News is a friend of Bill this entire hour. He is off the whiskey trail and back on the congressional trail, such as it is here in Washington, D.C. Also on that same trail, Benjamin Goad is a reporter for The Hill, covering doings here in the Congress and at the Supreme Court. Hey, Ben, nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Here, Bill. Thanks for having me.
So the big Supreme Court decision, the biggest of the week, was their 5-4 vote on prayer in city council meeting, particularly up in Greece, New York. So just summarize what the majority opinion was.
Sure. So in a little town of Greece, they have a tradition.
Get a little closer to that mic.
Okay, sure. Is that better?
Pull the mic to you. Yeah.
You betcha.
Right. Okay.
So in Greece, I think it's a town of 94,000 up in New York. I think upstate New York, I believe.
Yeah.
And they
near
have
Syracuse.
Near Syracuse, they have a tradition of using prayer to start the invocation to start the proceedings at town meetings, like a city council meeting. And basically, what the court is saying here is that city or any city can start its government meetings with a prayer, and even if that prayer is overtly sectarian, if it is religious and favors one particular religion, saying that does not violate the Establishment Clause of the Constitution. And
it occurs, from what I've read, one thing about Greece, New York, is that the only churches, so they have a pastor of the month who gives for like 4 weeks or whatever, the invocation. The only churches in Greece are all Christian churches. So therefore, every prayer is a Jesus prayer, right? Or usually mentioning by name in Greece, New York. What would the court's vote be if this were a suburb of Detroit, where the only religious institutions were mosques, and the only people giving the prayer were Muslim imams?
Yeah, well, somebody ought to take that challenge, I suppose, up to the
Be a little
Supreme
different?
Court.
Well, we already have. Well, with
Don't
this,
you think?
with this decision, we already have precedent, so that would protect the imam's prayer with this decision, right?
Well, my point of if this were brought,
if we go back in time, but if we look forward,
if this were brought by a suburb of Detroit, do you think the court would have ruled the same way?
I don't have a crystal ball, but
I think no.
But now it's but now that is protected from here on out.
In theory.
Okay.
I'd like if it happened. If it happened, I bet it would be challenged.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's interesting here is the justices used the free speech argument. I mean, basically, they said that to deny this church its right to start with a Christian prayer would be tantamount to censorship, and so we don't want to censor you, so go ahead and have your prayer.
Right. But the question, they said so many things in this majority decision, which I find offensive as a strong believer in the separation of church and state. I mean, my thing is, you've got your free speech. You can pray whatever you want say whatever you want in your prayer. You can say whatever you want in your politics. But the politics is at the city council, and the prayer is in the church.
So are you saying there should be no prayer or invocation at all before any meeting?
Absolutely. Right. Starting with the United States Congress, by the way. Yeah. Pull the plug. I mean, there is I recognize that we still allow it in the Congress, which I also think is wrong. But the other thing that bothered me about this, Kennedy, writing for the majority, among other things, he said, this is no different than the Pledge of Allegiance. You say the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of a public meeting, so why can't you have a prayer at the beginning of a public meeting?
Well, I
don't think you have to be a lawyer or a justice of the Supreme Court to see what's wrong with that argument. I mean, if you're pledging your loyalty to the flag of the United States of America, which we all belong to, right? Not everybody's a Christian,
That's what the critics say. I mean, there are certainly secular groups that push for an absolute separation between church and state, and they say, look, this is a decision that's that's sounds like we're back in the 1800s when we were there was a much more sort of monolithic religious bent to this country, and things have changed. And not only are there all different kinds of believers, there are also a growing number of non-believers, and they should have
agnostics or atheists or just non-believers. Kennedy also said, Chris, that that this is not a burden because if somebody happens to be there in the city council chamber waiting for the business of the city to be discussed, and they don't like the prayer, they can just walk out, and then come back. Again, I mean, this is the United States of America, right?
I mean, it's a difference between banning prayer, I guess, or giving them the choice to have prayer, right? And the court has has decided on not banning it outright. I wonder what would be more controversial if you had done that. I mean, to say that it would be illegal in city councils across the country to have different prayers, but then how do you determine what is a fair prayer? What is a? I mean,
my response to that would be then, God bless America, because I think it's pretty clear. And then the other factor which you can't get away from with this is that the 5 justices who said this is okay are all Catholics, and 3 out of 4 of the justices who said, "Oh no, it's not," are Jews, plus 1 Catholic, Sonia Sotomayor. The thinking Catholic of the group, I would
said not to be an avid churchgoer as well. You know, I think maybe the other Catholics are more outwardly religious than Miss Sotomayor. So.
Right. So that kind of put a little, to me, kind of black cloud over this. It's sort of almost like the Catholics versus the Jews. Here we go again. You can't escape that aspect. So, is this going to be? This is the law of the land now. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this case, a lot of people believe that this case goes further than the previous case, which it sort of upheld, which was the 1983 Marsh versus Chambers case, which said that the Nebraska state legislature could start with a prayer, and that prayer was non-sectarian. And in this case, they're expressly permitting the sectarian prayer.
All right. Then the question is, what's next? How can they continue to say no prayer in public schools, but yes prayer in public meetings?
Well, I think that would be the next logical challenge if they bring it up. But I'm not sure this court has the appetite to take up public school prayer.
But somebody can bring it to the court.
They have to choose to take it.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. They have to choose to take it. I think it would be hard if somebody brought that case. I think it would be hard not to take it, and I think it would be hard to continue to oppose prayer in schools given this decision.
The Supreme Court enjoys a robust history of ignoring lots of cases, and I think that they would probably choose to do so in this event.
Maybe that. Yeah. What other are there any other blockbuster cases, decisions coming before them this year?
Yeah, well, cases that have already been argued, there are a couple that are waiting to be decided. There's one, the Noel Canning case, which has to do with presidential recess appointments. Remember, Obama appointed 3 members to the National Labor Relations Board back in, I think, 2012. And while recess was adjourned, in a pro forma session, and the president basically is arguing that doesn't constitute Congress being in session, and therefore I can make a recess appointment. That was challenged, and arguments happened earlier this year, and the court has yet to decide on that case. It would, I think, have major implications for presidential authority going forward. And the other big shoe that's going to drop, perhaps even bigger in some people's minds, is the Hobby Lobby case, which is the birth control mandate case.
And then we also had the affirmative action case already decided. Chris, on the recess appointments, this has always been a political football because both parties have done recess appointments.
Right. This is
and I
not
know
so
you've
much
heard this debated on the Hill, I'm sure.
Not so much a partisan issue, I think, as an executive power versus legislative power. There's always that tension between both of those groups. And Congress slyly will, skip town, but be in these things called pro forma sessions
in order to try to prevent.
To say nope,
right?
you can't do that, even though they're sitting on the beach back home or doing whatever they do in their districts, right?
Yeah.
And the president says, no, I see through your game. I'm going to do this anyway. You're not here. You're out of Washington, and then they'll do this. So I think it'll be a fascinating case. Obviously, maybe a little bit more wonky than Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby is going to be the one that everyone's talking about nationwide. Probably has far more reaching implications. People will be more aware of that decision. A lot more eyeballs on that. But the one with recess appointments does have a lot of implications about executive power, and is going to be very important as well.
Hobby Lobby, just so our listeners and viewers remember, that's the case challenging the fact that contraception must be part of health insurance
employer-paid health insurance.
Employer-paid under Obamacare.
Right. If
And
the company chooses to offer health care, remember, they don't have to. They can choose to pay the penalty under the Affordable Care Act. But if they choose to offer insurance, they have to provide some contraceptive services. And I think what that means is FDA-approved contraceptives. And the companies who are challenging this, they only oppose a couple of those, which I think are like the intrauterine
IUD,
device.
right?
Yeah, IUDs, and some of the morning after pill type things, which they say
there's certain forms of conception they think, or contraception, right, that they think amount to an abortifacient, and that they should not. Therefore, they should not be covered. Why Hobby Lobby?
Well, people thought that was these cases are carefully chosen, and these plaintiffs are carefully chosen. They're a family-owned business, and I think by all accounts really have these beliefs. So they're sort of airtight on that front. But some people think they were poorly chosen in that they're too big. I mean, that is a major corporation with tens of thousands of employees, and some people thought they could have made a better case by having a true mom and pop, with really the smallest amount of employees needed to have the threshold where they would have to adhere to the Affordable Care Act, because that would be sort of a better picture to present to the court to make their case.
It's interesting, Chris, because the individual mandate seemed to be the first line of attack against Obamacare with the critics, and you don't hear that much about that anymore. I'm sure they haven't forgotten it, but now most of the emphasis is on this.
Well, the Supreme Court ruled on the individual mandate already.
Right. Good point.
So
Good point.
we've had that fight, and we can still squabble about it in Congress,
Yeah.
but the court has ruled. And no, this is the next step.
Yeah.
You have a lot of angry people that don't want to be forced to pay for certain things that they hold very strong moral convictions against. But as you said, Ben, exactly right. With Hobby Lobby, tens of thousands of employees, something like that, lots of employees.
Yeah.
Those employees, no doubt, come from a variety of traditions. And they probably could have been better off with a company that was mostly Christians, maybe Lifeway bookstores, for example, or something like that. Hobby Lobby, you're going to have people from agnostics, atheists, Jews, Catholics, lots of different types of people coming to work for them.
Or one of those mom and pop distilleries you just visited last week.
Yes, I'm sure a distillery would be a great example to bring to the Supreme Court as a moral conscience. I'm sure that would really fly over really well.
Here we are on the Hill in Washington, D.C. Nobody knows the Hill better than Ben Goad and Chris Moody from the Hill and from Yahoo News. We'll be right back. Take your questions, your comments. If you want to join the conversation, we invite you to at 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek,
Newtown.
Newtown,
Newtown.
Newtown.
How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad.
As a friend.
As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act. Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 None of us would want to be told we can't marry the person we love. As Americans, we believe in freedom. That's what I fought for as a Marine, and that's what we believe in as Republicans. Freedom means freedom for everyone. I didn't used to understand the importance of same-sex marriage, but after learning my brother was gay, I wanted the same rights for him. He was the best man at my wedding, and I want to be the best man at his. It's only fair that Calvin should have the freedom to marry the person he loves, too.
It's time for marriage.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
10 minutes before the top of the hour, in studio with us, Chris Moody here, friend of Bill, as a friend of Bill for the entire hour from Yahoo News, and Ben Goad from The Hill, thehill.com and yahoonews.com. I just have to ask about one other Supreme Court decision before we move on, and that was the one on the EPA rules for coal-powered plants. That was a big win for the administration, and I found a surprising decision from this court.
Yeah, well...
6-2.
6-2, absolutely. And this was basically reinstating some EPA regulations that had to do with air pollution that spilled from one state into another state.
Right.
But there's still, and we were talking about cases that haven't dropped yet, there's still another one that hits more closely to the EPA's right to regulate greenhouse gases, and that one remains undecided. So while I agree with you, Bill, that was a big victory for the president and his climate change initiative, but they're, I think, keeping the champagne on ice until the until the other one gets resolved.
Well, yeah, but of course that decision basically said if the downstream or the upstream states that are pumping this coal-fired pollution into the air have a responsibility for what happens in the downwind states when the people have to breathe this pollution.
Which tragedy of the commons is a very difficult thing to address, of course.
Yeah,
but now it isn't being addressed in a lot of ways. We saw with cap and trade, they've tried to do this legislatively, where you put a cost on your emissions, and that just went nowhere in Congress. So maybe the courts is the only place that the administration can get their will carried out.
On that point, yesterday at the White House briefing, Jay Carney was asked about, because the climate change report came out yesterday, so the question is, what do you recommend? What are you going to do? The president has his executive actions that he's going to take, but somebody said, well, what about the cap and trade or the carbon tax, the climate legislation? And Jay Carney said, we recognize it's dead.
It is.
And I thought, why why give up the ghost? I mean, it's tough. But
Right.
dead,
I mean, well,
dead.
they're
Do you agree? It's dead.
Of course
dead?
it is. I mean, you're in an election year, and it's not just. Of course, the Republicans are against it, but Democrats, especially ones up for election in the Senate, are just going to join the Republicans and crush it if it comes to election. And the last thing they want is a huge legislative defeat where Democrats join with Republicans against them. It kills it not only now, but for several years ahead, because they'll say, "Why should we introduce this? We already voted on it."
You read it the same way?
I think Chris is spot on. Coal State Democrats will run screaming from any cap and trade bill. I don't think even the biggest proponents in Congress, your Barbara Boxers and those folks are not pushing this. I'm not sure there's any piece of legislation that's deader right now. Maybe gun control.
Deader than dead. All right. Hey, well, let you guys get back to work and go wrestle these guys on the Hill, see if you can get any answers out of them. Good luck. Ben Goad, thanks so much for coming in. TheHill.com. Hey, Chris, always fun to have you in.
Great to be here.
All right, thank you. Welcome back from the Whiskey Trail.
Thank you. Now let's drink. How about you?
YahooNews.com. My turn on parting shot next.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Racing dot. I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
The Parting Shot with Bill Press. This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, the president released his White House report on climate change yesterday, and he was immediately accused of using scare tactics. Well, let's see what the report says. Extreme weather and climate events like tornadoes and wildfires have an increase in the last decade and are only going to get worse. Crops and livestock are already experiencing negative effects of climate change. That's going to get worse. Ocean waters are becoming warmer and more acidic. Human health is being impacted due to deteriorating air quality and diseases carried by insects, food, and water. And evidence of climate change appears in every region of the country. You know what? If that scares the hell out of people, it should. Have a great day, folks. See you back here again
This
tomorrow
is
morning.
The Bill Press Show.